Okay. Welcome to regular meeting of Brisbane Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, February 13, 2018, and we are meeting at Brisbane City Hall, 50 Park Place, Brisbane. I will call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Mackin?
Here.
Commissioner Manier?
Here.
Commissioner Saison?
Here.
Okay, we have 4 of them. Still one vacancy. Pretty soon that will be filled. Adoption of agenda. Anyone wants to make any changes? How about anyone in the audience? Nothing? We got only very little on the agenda tonight. So may I have the motion to adopt the agenda?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda of Tuesday, February 13th.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the adoption as it is carries. Consent calendar, surprisingly, we have nothing on that one this time. And now is the time for oral communications. Anyone in the audience who want to speak before the commission, the items that are not on the agenda tonight? I guess we don't have audiences here, so we'll move on to written communications. I didn't get anything, so there is none. So everything is none tonight, looks like. That's a good news or bad news?
Not everything. We still got item G.
Yeah, I know, but so far. And now we move on to new business, which is on item G, public hearings, 515 Tunnel Avenue, SC Berry. SC Berry Heavy Commercial District Design Permit DP-2-17. May I have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'll dim the lights here. The applicant proposes to construct an approximately 5,000 square foot modular administrative office building for Recology at their site at 515 Tunnel Avenue. This would be to replace an existing administrative office building at the site. The site is an approximately 6.8 acre lot that is largely paved and lies over the top of the closed landfill. It's located within the Beatty General Plan Sub-Area and zoned HC Beatty Heavy Commercial. The site borders the C1 Commercial Mixed-Use District to the south and east, and across Tunnel Avenue to the west. All of the surrounding uses are industrial in nature. And this is a blow-up here with the yellow showing where the proposed building is, and up here above the yellow is where the existing building is, and you could see the outline of a building that was removed a few years ago. And then this is the existing warehouse building. So the site to the south, kind of spreading out here, going south, is occupied by the Transdev bus yard. To the east are unimproved baylands areas used for soil and rock recycling. To the west is Tunnel Avenue and the Caltrain rail lines. And to the north are Recology's own facilities and a pipe distribution company. The site itself currently houses Recology's local administrative office. Towards the rear of the site is the warehouse, as I mentioned, along with parking for their trucks and equipment. The site is bounded by an approximately 8-foot high chain link and barbed wire fence. The applicant's proposal is to construct a 1-story modular office building. Once that's completed, the office workers would move over and the existing office building would be raised. This slide shows the area of the building to be raised in the red hatch, the forward-facing part of that. And then as I mentioned, the building that was removed a few years ago is just to the back of there, and that's just now a footprint essentially. And then the new building, of course, shown in gray here, and the kind of hatched area towards the bottom is landscaping, and then they would have parking surrounding the building. Although the new building would be temporary building, it would be more modern and provide a better work environment for the administrative workers at the location. No grading is proposed in conjunction with this application, as the proposed building is a pre-manufactured modular type to be assembled on the site. It would be placed on above-grade structural support system with tie-downs. The proposed structure, as I mentioned, is about 5,000 square feet in size, and it would be about 13.5 feet in height above grade. It would be set back about 23 feet from the front lot line and approximately 28 feet from the closest side lot line, which is to the south. It would be located behind a slatted chain link fence that runs along the property boundaries. A recommended condition of approval is included to reconstruct the fence and do some replanting along the narrow strip in front of it. Even though the building is temporary and would be largely hidden from view, the construction of any building in the HC commercial zoning district is subject to the granting of a design permit. This application meets all of the applicable design permit findings as discussed in the agenda report. It should be noted that the unit would be similar to the TransDev bus yard office located immediately to the south. Similar to this south, also similar, a temporary building is appropriate for this site given the long-term development plans for this property, and the larger Baylands area is still in flux. Also note that the HC zoning district does not establish development standards such as height limits, setbacks, and so on. Rather, the zoning district anticipates such development standards would be established by a specific plan. However, in this particular case, the replacement buildings with no net increase in floor area does not trigger the specific plan requirement. This design permit will regulate the appearance, form, location of the proposed building. Regarding building placement and scale, it would be located deeper into the lot than the current building and would be located behind the chain link fence, as I mentioned. Conditions of approval are recommended to require that the slated fence be replaced. I think I mentioned that, along with the landscaping. The site would have new plantings along that edge, that bottom edge, as I mentioned, and this would also be tied with a stormwater treatment system consistent with the state's stormwater requirements. Also, off-street parking available to the site would exceed the standards by more than double. 40 spaces would be provided, whereas 17 are required. Plus, it has additional parking outside the site along the frontage. The proposed project was reviewed by the Public Works Department, Building, Fire, Police Department, San Mateo County Environmental Health, Regional Water Quality Control Board, and also San Francisco PUC and Bayshore Sanitary District, since this location is in their jurisdiction. Conditions of approval are included in the draft resolution, and these include those conditions requested by these other departments or agencies, but none have taken issue with the proposal. In closing, staff recommends conditionally approving design permit DP 217 via adoption of the resolution containing the findings and conditions of approval. And actually, just real quickly, before we go to questions, so just a few slides showing images. So on the bottom, you have the existing building, which would be removed. On the top is where you see the trucks parked there is essentially where the new building would be located, and the driveway there in the middle would stay the same. These are some elevations that you have in your packet, so fairly standard modular type office building. This shows existing conditions on the top and on the bottom, and it's a little bit of tough angle, but on the bottom you can see the new building next to, essentially behind, the TransDev building. So kind of blend in that case. And then this gives you a little bit more of a perspective, bird's eye kind of view of what the building would look like. So with that, I'll take any questions if you.
Okay, any questions for the staff? We'll start with Commissioner McCann.
Ken, applauding the idea of the landscaping plans on the area to the south. The one thing it triggered in my mind from working on the DEIR is penetration of a cap by tree roots. So where we're calling for approval by Regional Water Quality Control, San Mateo Department of Health, over the landfill cap, if we're asking them to include large shrubs or small trees, do we really want them to go into that ground where they may penetrate the cap, or do we want to perhaps suggest that those go into boxes, planter boxes?
So already existing on the site, and I think it shows in that top image, is a small cluster of trees.
Right.
And you have the trees tend, and we can look into this further before we spec that. I wouldn't want to paint us in essentially with having it raised because we want stormwater to flow to it. So what I would like to do is essentially confirm with the county and the water board if they have any concerns regarding that. We could keep that to smaller plants, but we want to keep it flat to the ground, I think, is a priority so that the stormwater could flow to that area and get its treatment.
Yeah, the stormwater recycling, that's perfect. One other, just this is really minor, you may think it's silly, but there's a really good natural breeze, so I'm seeing all the HVAC. Are those windows going to open in that modular building? Because you can defray a lot of energy cost if you can just open the windows. Not all the time, but sometime. Is that something we can just suggest?
My understanding is that these are standard openable windows.
Great.
Maybe the applicant can confirm that. I see him nodding, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson.
Related to that, you said that the site is on the closed landfill, and I was wondering, did you mean non-operable landfill, or has this site gone under Title 27 landfill closure? It hasn't.
So it would have been closed in the 60s per standards then, but it is not necessarily to current standards for as addressed in the EIR for the overall area.
So if the areas to the south went through Title 27, would this area be affected as well?
What's going to trigger a Title 27 cap on this property or any properties of the south would be a change of use. Really what's being proposed here is really not a change of use. And so, again, if Recology chooses to do an expansion, that would when the cap will be formally brought up to Title 27 standards.
Okay, so those two areas will be completely independent as far as Title 27 is concerned.
They can be, yes.
All right. I have a question for the applicant, but maybe staff knows the answer. What is a CSR area in the middle of, what page am I on? It's all zoomed in. G123. I recognize all of the areas on the map, except in the middle there's a very large room called the CSR area. Well, maybe I'll hold it till the applicant.
It's right in the middle.
Floor plan?
Yeah, that's all my questions until the applicant comes up.
I took this as a common area.
Okay.
Customer services, okay. So no further questions at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Saracen.
I don't have any questions.
No questions? Okay. Okay, the question regarding the stormwater, even if you put it in the boxes, the water can still go around them. It's not going to be obstructed, right? I mean, why you need to have the flat surface there? you can have a channels where water can go through the channels. So I don't understand the logic as to why we need to have that. And secondly, if we must have that, then how about recommending the planting that has very shallow roots, not very deep roots that they cannot penetrate. But either way, I think the storm drainage can be designed to have the little troughs that the water can flow through there. You don't need to have the flat surface area.
Right, and I think the conditions of approval essentially allow the flexibility for them to.
Yeah. But I think the
go
concern is very valid, because the thing is, if you're going to put those kind of trees over there or planting, then it may, go through the protective layer, the cap. And I think it would be a good idea to have a design the area where the water can flow. The prime example, if you want to see what I'm talking about, is the Humboldt Road right in front of my house. They put the little trough there so water can go right through there. So I don't think it's necessary to have the flat area. Being an engineer, I can tell that that's not necessary. And you can design easily the area where the water can flow. So I think that's something we need to put it in the condition, because otherwise, if you don't, and later on the roots do go through that, we will be blamed, the Planning Commission, how come they didn't look into that. So I think my opinion is it can be done and it should be implemented.
If I
So-
can ask a question
Sure.
related to that, I'm wondering if staff has any information on what sort of cap was put in the 60s? If any.
Yeah, that's a good question also, to know exactly what was done. Maybe the applicant may have the information. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have any information on the thickness of the cover or its permeability. I don't know if the applicant is.
So if I may address the question of stormwater flow a little bit more. So under the C3 requirements, these are the municipal regional permit that the city operates under with the regional board. There are provisions in there for essentially treating stormwater through on-site means, essentially vegetated areas, that in this case, well, when you're going from one impervious surface to another type, for instance, from a building to a parking lot, or vice versa, which this has both, then those areas we want to capture essentially the stormwater in those areas and treat that. In this case, you have a couple of different areas, and I would be hesitant to essentially assume the engineering of that in
It's
too
very
much
simple.
detail before that. So that stormwater that's across the site will likely need to get over to the south edge, and so
No, it's not a very, very easy design, actually. And I think their engineer may be here, they can talk about it. But I think that I will leave it up to the city engineer. He can work with that, but I think the concern is genuine, and it should be addressed. And we don't know how it was capped in 60s. I don't know what kind of standards they had at that time. Probably not as stringent as now, as we learn more about that. So the cap may not be that thick as we envision. So I think that it's a good precautionary measure, and I don't, unless if there is complication comes up and it cannot absolutely be cannot be designed, and I don't think it's going to be that expensive either. Then maybe the staff can, work with the city engineer and see what can be done.
We
But I think
certainly
the
always do with these stormwater issues. I think there's sort of two elements. One, I think it's very easy to design conveyance, getting
Yeah.
the water from point A to point B. It's this question of the on-site treatment. and what form that on-site treatment takes. And again, the regional board's preference is it gets treated through landscaped areas. That's why a raised tree in a box wouldn't allow for that kind of percolation and infiltration and treatment. The stormwater can be handled from conveyance, but those are slightly two different things. We're trying to accommodate them all within one system. So as long as we have the flexibility to work with the regional board, the county, and the city engineer to come up with the appropriate solution.
I think the regional board should be brought to attention that the concerns that we have here, maybe they are not, we are more tuned into these issues here. I don't know the stormwater, the particular authority that you're working with, they are really, up to speed as to what the consequences in case the cap does break. So I'm sure if you discuss with them, they will be happy to work with it. But I think we should put something in the condition here that whatever you design there, landscaping, it should not penetrate the cap.
Sure, that's fine.
And I could change that condition that essentially that refers to the trees or large shrubs as if appropriate, given engineering restrictions, something to that effect.
Or you can even put something of the sort that they work with the sanitary board, whatever it is. It is San Francisco Sanitary District? San Mateo County.
Yeah.
To work with them and to come up with a proper solution so that whatever the treatment they do does not affect the cap.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Anything else staff has to this? I mean, commissioners have it to this stuff?
I do have another question.
Sure,
based
go
on
ahead.
Your comments.
Go ahead.
Since the landfill closure was done in the 60s, I imagine that the standards from the 60s are still in effect today. And does that mean that there's any monitoring going on relative to the cap or anything else about the site, or no?
I'm not aware of any monitoring that's specific to this site. Obviously, the way the larger area drains, and there is other monitoring closer to the bay and the lagoon, but I'm not aware of any on-site monitoring that's occurring. But again, maybe
you can ask
ecology
the applicant about that. But once again, I think the standards in 60s were not as stringent as they are now. So my position is that probably monitoring will be minimal, if at all. But that's my assumption. Maybe the applicant can put more shade on that, shed the light on that.
If there's no monitoring, I don't know what assurances we have that the cap is.
We don't have any.
At the moment.
But what we're trying to do is further deterioration. If you put trees that they're going to go right through that, knowingly that we are approving this, and it does happen. So our job here is to prevent that, and that's what we're trying to do here. So monitoring we cannot change because it was done in 1960s. I don't know whether you have a new project here. Can you bring it up to the new standard? That will be a different issue, where we have to come up with a new design for the cap or monitoring efforts and all of that. I don't know whether design permit trigger that or not.
No, so the county has indicated that they have specific requirements on how the structure is built, and the structure is not going to be excavated into the cap.
Yeah.
And so, as an example, on the TransDev building immediately to the south, there's actually ventilation along the skirt of the building, and as well as monitoring devices within that building so that it can detect if there's any kind of buildup of gas. And I've heard no problems, no issues with that building. The building that this replaces, of course, has been there for years and doesn't have those. So this is actually an improvement in that respect. These building plans, they've already seen the design permit plans, but then the building plans will also go back to the county and to confirm that their requirements are being met.
You know, the normal standard is that if you apply for the changes like this, the new design permit, or in my opinion, that we may have to bring it up to the current standards, but I don't know whether this qualifies for that. And we don't want to go into that kind of changes here. But whatever they're doing with the temporary buildings, I don't think that will have much impact on the foundation, because they are very, very light structures, and I don't think they're going to dig into that, into the cap at all. So that issue is not there, but somebody may question that if you have such a big improvement, shouldn't that be brought to the new standards which exist now? And that's just a question to the staff, that what's your opinion?
Well, I mean, this design permit one is not a new, and the amount of square footage that was devoted to building on this site was the same or greater, is my understanding.
It's greater than
Than
this.
historically. So there's actually there's less building than there was historically on this site. So that wouldn't qualify as an expansion in our interpretation. There's no change in use. It's the same fundamental purpose. So, you know, from a land use standpoint, we wouldn't look at this as an expansion or a change in use. And again, the application was sent to the county, who administers on behalf of the state the landfill requirements. And the county did not require a full closure of this site either. So it's not their interpretation that this triggers a full Title 27 cap as well. So
That's okay. But the thing is, the new buildings will be up to the current standards, right?
That is
The
correct.
city engineer is going to make sure that they meet the current standards. So unless and until the San Mateo County has that rule that every time you make changes like that, I don't think we can impose that on our own, because that's under their jurisdiction. Am I correct?
correct.
Okay.
You're correct.
So I don't have any problem with that, but I just do want to bring it into the record that we did discuss this part, so that somebody in the future said, how come it was approved? Okay, with that, we will open up the public hearings, and we will hear, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will start with the applicant. Please state your name and the company you're with.
All right, thank you. My name is Tim Caulfield. I'm with Recology San Francisco. We're here to discuss the mod space office building. Is the project we're talking about at
Can you
'Excuse me,
speak
Tim.
in mic so the people can-
515 Tunnel Avenue. Ken has kind of covered the basics here. I kind of would like to answer your questions, I think, at this time. I'd be going through the same information we've kind of already covered, but if you would like to address questions my way, I'd be happy to answer.
Commissioner McCann, you had some questions for the applicant?
No, I really don't. Thank you.
Nobody has any questions? I don't. I already asked my questions.
So I think part of what we were discussing a minute ago with the vegetation of how it's developed, there is a 20-foot berm that's existing out there that we plan to develop with a landscape architect. We don't have that established at this point. I would suggest we used drought-resistant plant or vegetation, or use, if you have data about the property next to us, what they used, we could match similar. It seems to be working well for them. So I can touch base with your planning department on that. Regarding the foundation, again, this is a completely unintrusive type of building. That's the direction we wanted to take, just because we knew the nature of the land.
Yeah.
We don't plan to change anything on the site. It's just the operations currently, our floors are sloping. Settlement of the foundations have created not ideal working conditions for our operations, and we want to give our employees an up-to-date building. Part of your concerns, these are governed and pre-approved and registered with the Housing and Community Development of California. And they do actually arrive pre-assembled in sections, 7 sections, all that meet code, the International Building Code. So we should be okay on that.
And I'm glad that you are also putting the solar energy as will be. That would have been our requirement, but you already.
Yeah, that's something we're going to have to look at, especially with, this is a temporary building. We have a 5-year lease on this. How that actually works, I'll have to discuss with your department. But we are, on other properties, we are moving forward with solar, so in the area. But we don't have anything currently established for this project.
Okay, anyone has any other questions for the applicant?
Oh, I thought I saw somewhere here in the plans that it said that solar shall be installed.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
condition, I think.
If I may, through the chair, so
Yeah.
their plans did not include solar. I added that as a condition of approval, which is consistent with the ordinance that went through the Planning Commission and City Council about a year ago. So there's a requirement for solar. The condition is not necessarily that it has to be on this building, but you have a lot of room on this site, and so I think there's flexibility there, but there's a minimum requirement for solar, and so that's something that it's required already by ordinance as a minimum.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and actually, they must have it according to the ordinance. So, we like to see some creative ways to generate the solar power, and I hope you're going to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Then we should go ahead and make the motion to close the public hearing.
I actually have a couple of questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Getting back to the customer service area, I was wondering if you could describe sort of like, what that area is used for, and in comparison to like what the driver room is used for, and how.
Basically, we have, it might be best. Glenn's our operations
Okay.
manager here. He can touch on that.
Thank you. So we have.
Please state your name.
Sorry. My name's Glenn Bonji. I'm the operations manager for the services provider 515 Tunnel Avenue for Ecology. The customer service area, we have 5 customer service representatives, and they take care of phone calls. They handle phone calls, and they help dispatch the work out to the drivers. So that's what the area's for.
Great, and I'm wondering about what is the driver area used for? I guess drivers occasionally
Yes.
take breaks there.
The drivers check in. It's their break room. They get work there. It's like basically it's more of a break room and a rest area for the drivers in between shifts.
The one thing that sort of struck me about the plan is it seemed that the women's restroom was a little bit inconvenient to the driver's room, and was wondering if it would be possible to add another door somewhere to connect the CSR area to the driver's room. Would that interrupt your operations?
I'm sorry. So we have 2 doors that go from the driver's area to the customer service area. I believe.
Oh, are there?
Yeah.
Okay. It looked like that was an unbroken wall, but if those are actually doors, then.
So we are adding the exterior door on. So we have the one door on the south side. We'll be adding a door on the north side of the driver's room too. So there will be a second door added.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
That's a good idea.
All right. I'm not a public
I guess
speaker, so sorry about the nerves.
That's all right. I guess I just misread the map, or maybe it's not on my map. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other questions for this? Nobody from the audience wants to say or come up with any questions. So we have made a motion to close the public hearings.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now the deliberation, what we're going to do. Should we go ahead and approve that with the added condition that regarding the stormwater and the.
Right.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right, Ken?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, anybody has any other ideas, or should we go ahead and approve the application?
For clarity, I'm just wondering what staff is noting about the stormwater.
Okay, that's a good idea. Let's find out.
So what I would normally do is provide, take what you have and essentially provide it in a red line final to the chair for him to sign. But essentially the thoughts that I've got from you is on that one condition is that the landscape plans shall include replacement plantings, and instead of saying including trees or large shrubs, I would say something to the effect of and may include trees and large shrubs, subject to review and approval by, I would say, San Mateo County regarding root depth. You know,
I think we have to come up a little bit better than that.
All right. Well, this is on the fly, so I'll let you
Yeah.
come up with the.
Well, why don't we do this? We will approve this if you all agree. Go ahead.
If I may, Ken, just a clarification, we have the applicant here.
Mhm.
Whose idea was the trees? Is that from our end, the staff, or is it from
this
their
was
end?
From our end, essentially. So we have a couple of findings that relate to, one has to do with providing an outdoor space.
Right.
And so this would provide a little bit more protection if you were to have, say, a bench at the edge of the parking lot for an outdoor break space. So it's something I added, but it was tied to a finding. I don't think removal of trees and having just lower order plants would negate the finding. It just struck me as something a bit better. What I've heard, and this is more anecdotal than anything, is that there's a good depth of soil over that over the landfill materials, and so I'm not. When I wrote it in, I did think about the roots, but it wasn't a real concern that I had. But I can understand your concern to want to confirm that before we plant anything there.
Why don't we just put a simple language that whatever landscaping should not penetrate the cap.
Okay.
I think I have a suggestion that's a bit of a middle ground. I appreciate your concern for an employee area that's sheltered from the wind. I drive down Tunnel. I drove down today and looked, and the trees that are there are not faring really well in that horrific wind. So I'm also concerned that while we're looking at trees, they may not last. So could we say that to channel that storm water, something like just right outside City Hall that can handle the runoff into the soil, and that perhaps we ask for either trees or some sort of screening. They could just put up some sort of a nice fence or an overhang, very inexpensive way to provide some of the same amenities to the employees. Give them the option.
Mhm.
Landscaping plus trees, or landscaping with some sort of a.
Yeah, but we do want to put the requirement that whatever trees that they choose, the root system will be such that it's not going to penetrate the cap.
Right.
So I
That's the
think
that's the main issue.
So I think you're both on a good point here, and I can change the language essentially to say that it would to confirm that the root depths would not penetrate the cap, and we would run that by the county and raise it specifically, to say, hey, do you have any concerns with this? But also to allow flexibility, as you're talking about, so I can recraft that condition to allow flexibility in the design, and because ultimately what we're after is a functional stormwater treatment space.
Yeah.
I think having a space that's functional for employees. You know, this is an industrial area. It's not going to be a park. And so I think we give them some flexibility in how they make that. And the applicant is,
You get to speak in the mic so that there are people watching at home.
Oh, okay.
So,
There is an existing fire line that runs down that berm, so whatever vegetation you put in there, it is fairly shallow. So we're talking trees. That was the one thing that's a concern. If we decide to make it a requirement to put trees in there, that could be detrimental
could
to the
affect-
fire line. So
could affect the fire line also,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think there are some concerns here, and I think maybe you should draft up some condition, and maybe next meeting you can bring it to us, but we can go ahead and approve that, subject to, and then you can run it by the,
Are you talking about continuing this case so we can craft the condition? Is that?
if
Because
you
normally,
want.
again, the normal course of events is you get direction,
Yeah,
the-
we can do the directions, and that's fine, and.
and
but
we
the
show
thing
up
is,
on the red line version that.
Yeah,
the-
red line version, and then next meeting, you can bring this up, and if any of the members have any concern, planning commissioners have any concerns, they can just alter it a little bit.
Well, we can't really, I mean, we're either closing the public hearing and approving it subject to conditions, or we're not. We can't close a public hearing, give you conditions, and then you change them in a subsequent hearing. That's just not procedurally something we can do, so.
So
You can
how
give direction
how
and
we
we can-
resolve that? Can we come up with a language now, or?
I think it's sufficient to make the condition work with staff for suitable landscaping where it's.
Yeah,
so
my
plan
opinion.
to get
I-
a landscape to.
I think the condition would just be changed, that piece of it. The landscape plan shall include replacement plantings that do not penetrate the cap.
yeah.
Done.
I have a question. It seems like we're all unclear as to how deep the soil is to the cap. I mean, do we know? Do we have that information?
Only if the applicant does. We don't have it.
I would use the baseline of the fire line. We know where that is. It's all the same material, and that's at least about 4 feet deep.
Yeah, that's pretty shallow.
I mean, that should be, especially, that's why I'm thinking drought-resistant
Yeah.
planting. They're shallow root systems, they're low maintenance, and even shrubbery you can put in there, and the roots aren't intrusive enough that it'd damage an 8-inch fire line.
I think the language that Ken came up with is pretty good, actually. If you guys all agree, then we can proceed with that. And let's take thank you so much. And let's make a motion to approve that with that particular change, additional condition. So for a change, I will make a motion to go ahead and approve this application number DP-2-17 design permit. Actually, it's a design permit. 515 Tunnel Avenue, HC Berry Heavy Commercial District, and design permit for a new one-story, 4,966 square foot modular office building to replace one existing and one pre-existing building on the same site, which total approximately 9,300 square feet. Timothy Caulfield is and the applicant, and Sanitary Fuel Company Ecology San Francisco owner. But before I take the vote, I want to add one more, just a comment, that both Berry Street and Berry Avenue and Tunnel Road, and that part is really, really bad in terms of the payment. It's very difficult to drive through there. So is it possible? I don't think we can attach to this, but I just want to make a general comment that if you guys can at least every 2-3 years repave it, because currently it's in a state of despair. And I will be surprised if somebody is not going to file something, because it's really, really bad. So that's just my comment. But anyhow, we'll go ahead with the motion, and I made the motion. Who wants to second?
I will second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so you got the approval with the revised condition added to that. And I will read the appeal process now. Anyone may appeal the action of the Planning Commission to the City Council not later than 15 calendar days following the Planning Commission's decision. An application form and fee is required to make a formal appeal. For additional information, please contact the city clerk at 415-508-2110. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and you got the project. Thank you. Okay. Next, we will go with this time I'm not going to let go without you first. Items initiated by staff.
You're too kind. I actually don't have too many items. One is, I think as the chair alluded to, the Planning Commission, the interviews for the vacant Planning Commissioner seat and the reappointments are set for March 6th, is my understanding. And so as you consider your item J on this calendar, you may want to take that into advisement, whether you want to go ahead and move forward with item J or not, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that's the council schedule is March 6th for the interviews. The appointments, whether they occur, that night or some subsequent meeting, I don't know, but just wanted you to be aware of that before you decided on.
I have to send a note to the city clerk that I will not be able to make March 6th.
Oh, okay.
I will be out of town.
Okay.
But I will send them the letter or email. Okay. Go ahead. Next.
That's all I have.
That's all you have? Okay. And then we have the items initiated by the commission. And under that, we have one item, verbal report from General Plan Zoning Consistency Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Pretty long title. So who's the one that giving the update on that verbal report? From who?
I'll give an update.
You're going to give the update. Who's our rep on that committee?
So Commissioner Mackin and I met with staff and legal counsel and had a very long discussion about the zoning map and general plan designations, which should have been brought into consistency when the general plan was first proposed or first approved in 1994, but it was somehow missed and not noticed until 2012. And after discussing all of the complex and interrelated issues, we decided that we should take no action on this matter at this time.
No action. Interesting. Even though it's not consistent.
That's correct.
What's the reason for not taking any action? What did they say?
There were multiple reasons.
But are we going to take it into account some later date or what?
At some later date.
Okay.
I mean, I think that makes sense given that the city council that matters pending before them. So it'd probably be premature for us to be discussing that, right?
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. Okay. Selection of the Planning Commission officers is the next item. My personal opinion is to wait until after the appointment so that we can have full commission here, unless somebody else has different ideas.
I was just wondering how often that happens because it was only a couple of months ago we did it.
Yeah, that's true. My term is only 2 months ago I was appointed. So maybe if I get reappointed, it's possible we can delay until next year, whatever, but that we can discuss right after the...
Sure. I mean, we would, the commission rules do set out when the appointments are supposed to happen. So, but certainly it's at the discretion of the commission if you want to do.
Yeah, in the case of Bayland, we extended so many times until almost 2 or 3 years. So one chairman was there, chairperson was there.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to question the rules, just ask what they were because it happened recently, and so I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Well, I know at that point the commission's objective was to have the same chair through the hearings, and again, that's at your discretion. The rules call for the matter to be considered on the first meeting in February, so that's before you can continue it at your.
So why don't we continue if all of you agree that we will bring it back at later stage after the
The
full
appointments have
commission
been
is
made, okay?
Okay, and last item here is and we made it pretty quick tonight, adjournment to the regular meeting of February 27, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. So may I have somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to the regular meeting of February 27, 2018.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
It's probably like the earliest meeting we've ever had.
Oh, we've had